Welcome to Forthright. I'm Sulani Madsen, bringing you an audio podcast of my weekly newspaper column, and this one is a double feature. In part one, the emphasis is on election integrity as a barrier that has to be faced in building trust. It will continue to be part of the background of this year's election for many reasons, a few of them highlighted in part one. But I couldn't leave the story there. We need to build American hope, and that meant I asked my editor if I could do this as a two-parter with suggestions on how to fix this for 2028 in part two. But first, as published Thursday, July 11th, 2024 in the Spokesman Review, Rebuilding Trust in Election Integrity. Trust is relationship-based, not technology-based. Unfortunately, three recent systems-focused actions by statewide elected Democrats work against rebuilding trust in the integrity of Washington's elections. First was Senate Bill 5843, which was signed into law by Governor Jay Inslee and went into effect on June 6th. After failing to convince three counties to accept nationally standard Albert sensors on their internet-based computer networks, Democrats moved legislation to coerce cooperation with a big stick. It's a state mandate requiring connection to one particular national monitoring system intended to detect hackers. Counties choosing other technical systems are ineligible for election security funding grants. But the Albert sensor missed a 2020 ransomware attack on Lincoln County. It only recognizes known hostile addresses. Lincoln County now uses different tools for network security. Perry County also removed the device, and Grant County never installed one. It's not hard to understand why there's little trust in its usefulness from these three neighboring counties. Once bitten, twice shy. It's also not difficult to understand why most counties accept the system. Albert sensors are ubiquitous nationally, they seem harmless, and besides, what choice is there if the county wants the funding? We've all clicked the pop-up, I accept the terms and conditions box on websites just to get on with life online and understand we risk getting our data hacked. Organizations often aren't much different in decision-making. The holdout counties are driven by unsatisfactorily answered questions. An Albert sensor for monitoring and reporting internet activity is only connected to a county's administrative network, which does not or should not include the required standalone elections network. Since there is no connection to the elections network, skeptics question the value of networking county software nationally in securing elections, while giving Albert and its software engineers access to county databases. In an interview when Senate Bill 5843 legislation was being considered in January, Mary Blechschmidt, Lincoln County GOP chair, testified, it surveils county networks, but could be made bidirectional and we'd never know it. Then there was a consent decree signed by Attorney General Bob Ferguson, who's also a gubernatorial candidate, eliminating Washington's constitutional requirement for 30 days residency before registering to vote. For an attorney general who claims he is always ready to fight for Washington citizens, consenting to this decree sends the wrong signal when illegal immigration through a poorly controlled U.S.-Mexico border is at record levels. Any action softening residency requirements now undermines efforts to rebuild trust. Most concerning in Washington's all-vote-by-mail system is loosening of guidance from Secretary of State Steve Hobbs on checking signatures. According to new training documents, the basis for examining signatures has shifted. Under WAC 434-261-052, the ballot declaration signature must be assumed to be valid unless there are, quote, multiple significant and obvious discrepancies, end quote, from the signature on record. The old training started from a position of neutrality and directed signature verifiers to look for obvious signs of both discrepancy and legitimacy. That's how forensic document verification is supposed to be done. The new training guidance may also have legal problems. In Michigan, a judge recently ruled on a case over a similar question brought by the RNC, the Michigan Republican Party, and the National Republican Congressional Committee, saying, quote, that the initial presumption of validity in signature verification of absentee ballot application envelopes mandated by the December 2023 guidance manual issued by their Secretary of State is incompatible with the Constitution and laws of the state of Michigan, end quote. Hobbs' new standard may be well-intentioned, but creates the potential to disenfranchise voters by failing to balance priorities. Signature verification is a subjective judgment affected by how recently someone attended training, as well as the culture of the county. Ballot totals in counties with a political mindset to making voting easier may be inflated, but votes suppressed in other counties approaching signature verification with a focus on making it harder to cheat. In Washington, that means a higher percentage of votes counted in left-leaning counties like King and a tighter percentage in right-leaning counties like Lincoln. Complaints from progressives that rejecting a signature disenfranchises voters who are questioned overlooks the disenfranchisement of voters who followed all the rules but then find their vote negated by a questionable ballot signature. The solution can't just be looser signature verification everywhere, but more accuracy in ensuring every vote is valid. A higher rate of challenged ballots should be a welcome sign that signature verification is working. The process for curing a challenged ballot is not hard if you're not a cheater. Voting should be easy and cheating should be hard was one of the core principles identified by the Braver Angels in its recently released Trustworthy Elections Campaign Report. Next week's column will look at some of the 727 unanimously adopted actions that came out of 26 politically balanced workshops held across the country over the past 3 years. There are ways to rebuild trust, but it will take leadership from all sides open to backing off the rhetoric and rebuilding relationships. And I am one of the two state coordinators for Braver Angels, so that's why I have an interest in and I'm aware of that particular report. My editor questioned the statement about the signature curing process being easy if your ballot is challenged because it had not been easy for her husband in Spokane County, but it should be. If challenged, your county elections office should call you if you put your phone number on the outer envelope or contact you by mail. Mail can take some time. You can also track your ballot to find out if the signature has been accepted by going to voteY.gov, linked from the Forthright Substack page. And now, part 2, as published Thursday, July 18, 2024, in the Spokesman Review, Rebuilding trust face-to-face. Last week's column asserted a need to rebuild voter trust in the integrity of Washington's elections. It will take more than better technology. It will take a new culture of community connection. According to reporting in The Hill, belief in the integrity of the 2020 presidential election results has been dropping for the last 2 years, with only 66% of independent voters saying the election of President Biden was legitimate. We indeed have a problem, nationally and in Washington state. If you have ever received a ballot for a deceased family member or a duplicate ballot for 2 versions of your own name, you know there are holes in Washington's all-mail system. It makes one wonder how many are exploited and never caught. While there is little solid evidence of widespread fraud in Washington elections and few people are individually prosecuted, the potential is there, and stories of stray ballots are widely shared. The weakness of mail-in ballots is knowing who actually voted the ballot, in a system where what used to be called absentee ballots are pushed out to registered voter addresses instead of requested by interested voters. Those experiences are behind calls for in-person voting and voter identification. Republican talking points say mail-in balloting is fraudulent, Democrats respond that voter ID is racist, and neither side is willing to give up useful partisan weapons. Putting aside party polarization to rebuild confidence in our elections is essential to the future of the Republic. It was the challenge accepted by the Braver Angels Trustworthy Elections Project, launched in 2021 to prepare for the 2024 election. In a prescient statement given the attempted assassination on former President Trump on Saturday, the executive summary includes this statement. Quote, "We must, as one people, take action to rebuild confidence in our election process. If we fail to act now, we run the risk of losing our republic and devolving into violence, chaos, and balkanization backed by force of arms. We will cease to be the United States." End quote. There are 727 cross-partisan points of agreement in the June 2024 final report. Every word in each statement had to be accepted unanimously by a politically balanced group of 194 participants from across the country, meeting over a period of 3 years in 26 workshops. Unanimity across party lines is a tough standard. Conservative and progressive participants were both surprised by some of the final points of agreement that didn't fit the easy political narrative. Here's 2. States should require a person to show voter ID when voting. And secondly, all states should implement no excuse needed absentee ballots. Those are 2 of many examples. The report blows away partisan talking points, but implementation of any points of agreement will take bipartisan action based on both the underlying principles and a clear definition of the problems specific to each state. Mail-in ballots are an option worth keeping nationally, according to the project participants. Washingtonians old enough to remember going to the polls will admit enjoying the convenience, even while bemoaning the weaknesses, but we can make changes. Requiring mailed-out ballots be affirmatively requested would reduce the opportunity for stray ballot shenanigans. Each request could include scanning a valid ID affirming a voter is a citizen eligible to vote. In Washington's current system, the voter ID problem rests on both keeping addresses in the voter registration rolls up to date and the challenge of signature verification. Signatures on paper are becoming a rarity, and many younger voters don't have one. In the next decade, we're going to need a new identifier, less reliant on a subjective judgment about the quality of one's handwriting in a digital age. But solving the technical problem of digital ID won't restore trust. When the Washington legislature adopted an all-mail system in 2011, the objections weren't primarily around security or voter identification. It was the loss of community and that sense of being part of something larger. After years of defending mail-in ballots because of the convenience, I've changed my mind. We could benefit from a little less convenience and more connection. Standing at a polling place with ID in your hand makes it hard to cheat. Seeing the faces of your fellow citizens taking their responsibility to vote seriously makes it harder to depersonalize those others who didn't vote the same as you when the results are announced. Establishing a new normal of gathering together every 4 years as a nation would be a step towards restoring faith in trustworthy elections by restoring a sense of solidarity. What would it take? Make it the top priority assignment for all county employees for 1 week. Open polling places in every county-owned building. Declare a school holiday so all schools are open as polling places. We can do this for 2028. Meanwhile, remember that those stories of fraud in Washington are shared because they are rare. Ballots are in the mail this week. Treat them with respect. And I'm recording this on July 24th. So your ballot is out. Mine has already been voted and returned, and I have gone to votewa.gov and checked to see that the ballot has been accepted. My signature was verified. I did have one very robust exchange with a commenter, and I'll read a bit of that to give you a flavor of their comments, leaving him or her anonymous. From the naysayer: "Your article was another trip around the old red barn. You do more to harm elections by claiming there's a real problem with elections. The main issue is the mindless adults think Trump won because he said he did. While the namby-pamby group you tout has some good suggestions for the future, we should rely on election officials to keep us on track, not ivory tower pundits. No one thought our elections were rigged until your party's leader lied about it. You're clearly too afraid of losing your audience if you call that out." And I just had to respond, give me a break. Americans have been complaining about election rigging since the days of Boss Tweed and Tammany Hall, or more recently since Bush v. Gore and Rossi v. Gregoire. The complaining is nothing new. Pretending everything is hunky-dory and we just have to do what the experts say does not build trust, it destroys it. And we could have an invigorating debate over where the fault lies, or who broke the trust, or who broke it first, or who did the most complaining most recently, or who fits into the basket of mindless adults this naysayer refers to, right up there with Clinton's basket of deplorables as a non-winning catchphrase for Democrats. We could keep rehashing the past, but we need to look at the future. And I told this person that I was so glad to read that you acknowledged there are good suggestions in the Braver Angels report. Suggestions that didn't come from ivory tower pundits, but from citizens across the political spectrum who are tired of the ivory tower pundits. I thank the writer for being a reader, saying I do appreciate every member of my audience, regardless of their political affiliation. I really do like hearing from folks who have a thoughtful comment to make. A thoughtful comment to make. Although the thoughtless ones are kind of funny sometimes. He or she turned the rest of the exchange off track into a rant on the expanding attraction of the Republican Party to working class voters, which is an interesting subject indeed. And if you are interested, I recommend the book Second Class by Batya Ungar-Sargon, and I'll put a link to that book in the reference links at the bottom of the Substack post. That political shift will change the shape of the general election results. And on that note, don't forget to responsibly, thoughtfully vote your Washington primary ballot. Must be in an official Dropbox or postmarked by Tuesday, August 6th. Vote whether you agree with me or not on the results. I recorded this podcast after writing the column for publication July 25th and realized that trust is the theme developing this month. In Thursday's column, building trust between the City of Spokane administration and the voters over the enforcement of Proposition 1 will drive the conversation. Buy a paper, check your online newspaper subscription for a preview, and subscribe to my Substack publication with or without a pledge for notification of new content, like these column and commentaries, and more as we head into the general election.